Good evening and welcome to OTF Connects webinars. Tonight it's part 3 of honoring teacher well-being from self-care to self-aware. Our presenters are Sue Stevenson and Maya Aziz. And Sue comes to us, I believe, from the Coburg area, and she's connected with the Happiness at School team. I've been checking out her Twitter account. She's got over 1,000 tweets and lots of great information on there. So I'll be putting that link up soon. Please check that out at your leisure. And of course, we got Maya back, who's a writer, speaker, development consultant, and a self-proclaimed joyful giggler. So once again, we're honored to have these two present to us. I'm going to turn it over to them. Enjoy your evening, folks, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Trish. So it's Maya here, and hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be back with all of you, and how great to see some familiar names out there as well. Thank you for coming back, and for those of you who are joining us for the first time tonight, thank you for taking time, some of your precious time this evening to join us. And I hope by the end of it, I'm not the only one joyfully giggling, but that we have everyone feeling a little bit better. So I was really happy to see, I really like that map that Trish puts up at the beginning always. It shows how everyone comes from all over the province, and we have such a rich variety of people joining us tonight. But I'm wondering if we can actually get a little bit more information, because I know not only are you coming from a variety of different places, but you're also coming with different experiences, coming with different backgrounds, perhaps with different needs, and certainly with different things that you can contribute to what we're hoping is going to be a really interactive evening. So what we're going to do, just to start things off, hi there, everyone. Volume is a little low. Okay, I'm going to try to get a little bit closer to the mic. Thank you for that feedback. I hope there won't be feedback. So what we'd like to do, hello, everyone. What I'm going to ask that you all do is, if possible, can you choose one of those icons, the little clip art icons, and just indicate for us, to give us a sense of who's in the room. Are you a classroom teacher? Are you an administrator? Are you a specialized support person? Something else? If you'd like to be more specific, for example, if you'd like to share, if we've got any mental health leads out there, that would be interesting to know. You can certainly feel free to either use the text box and just type it on the screen, or just pop it in the chat box. That would also work. So we have a lot of classroom teachers, which is great. Has everyone had a chance to sort of indicate where what kind of background they're coming from? So a lot of classroom teachers. That's really helpful for us to know, and I know we're going to have a really rich discussion as a result of all of your own experiences as well. And we hope this is a bit of a mutual learning session. So I know we can't see each other live, but we did want to sort of introduce ourselves and let you see what we look like in our offices remotely here. So my name is Maya, and I am the one on the right. And I am a social worker, actually, by education. I have been working in the healthcare system in Montreal for a good 20-something years. I currently work as an organizational development consultant for the McGill University Health Centers. So I really work with professionals and teams, looking at their well-being, their work climate, to ensure that they are as healthy and as effective in their work as possible. I specialize in supporting resilience in all human services through positive interventions and applications of humor. And so some of you know who were here before, but I am in fact a CHP, which is a certified humor professional, which, yes, is a real thing and not something I just made up for a laugh. I do have a certificate in applied and therapeutic humor. We're going to be talking a little bit more a little later about what that means. And it's something that I know is also very close to the heart of my wonderful colleague Sue here, who I'm going to pass it over to Sue to introduce yourself. Go ahead, Sue.
Well, thanks, Maya. Thanks a lot, and wonderful to see lots of people back who've been with us, and some new people, too. It's great to be connected all over the province. And just a little bit about me. I came from a teaching background. I guess I'm still teaching, And I had 17 years teaching secondary school family studies, and I was a department head. I became a staff learning specialist. I worked in 4 different school boards in Ontario, moved around a bit, and then ended my career with a little touch in administration. I guess that you could say, I don't like to say I'm retired, but I do like to say I'm kind of reinvented, and and so I've become an author of different books and really able to delve into this field of happiness and laughter and humor as it relates to well-being in more detail. So we're glad to be here with you tonight. And a little bit about our plan. As requested, we're going to share a little bit on happiness at school with you and what that is. We've included some information and guided imagery on mindfulness, and that is definitely a road to well-being. There was a 4 corners homework activity or exercise on the second webinar, and we're going to invite you to share what you thought there tonight. We're going to revisit a little bit and extend the character strength strand of our webinars and look at gratitude. And I'm going to give you a heads up here that we're really committed, Maya and I are committed to giving you a good chunk of time. Hopefully 30 minutes is our plan. At the end, near the end of the webinar, we'll have a few comments at the end, but we want to devote that to your input. We want to know what you're doing, what works, what doesn't work about mental health and well-being. And we want to learn from you. So we know you're all passionate educators. We really want to open the floor up to you tonight. So we hope that you take that challenge, and we'll tell you how you can share that. There'll be a couple different ways, but we just wanted to tell you about that at the beginning. So I wanted to now just kind of shift into our first, as requested topic, a little bit more about happiness at school. And one thing we're finding in mental health and well-being is that there's a trend to innovative, cutting-edge approaches. Innovative approaches. In addition to the traditional client therapist role. And we found that kids have connected with this, as you can see from that photo on the right. And it was an idea of mine about 6 or 7 years ago, and now we have 3 comedian coaches from Humber College and Second City, and we have a bigger team, and we spend about 6 hours with students, either over separate weeks or in a full day program. And what they do, which is really neat, is they write and they perform stand-up comedy acts about their own lives. So they write about things that have caused them problems or things that are niggling at them. We call it turning problems into punchlines. And it really becomes a literacy and well-being project. I can see Trish has put up the link there, and you can find a lot more about that. And the pictures on the screen are from North Kipling Junior Middle School, which is where I was principal when I became reinvented. And we've been going back there every year and working with all the grade 7s. It's a grade 6 to 12 project. So I picked out a little short clip that I'd like you to see. It's also on the website, but Trisha's going to put up the link. And it's, don't go to it just for a sec. It's called We Are Savvy. It's from a program called We Are Savvy. It was kind of a unique thing that they did where they went around filming non-traditional, I don't even know what you'd call it, non-traditional activities that girls were involved in. So they thought being involved in comedy was non-traditional for girls. So they filmed this little clip at North Kipling, and I'd like you to take a look at it now. And what I'd ask you to do is to give us a little green check mark beside your name when you're back and you've finished watching the little clip. Do you have any questions? Are we ready to go? I think you're all used to this. So click on the link and have a look at We Are Savvy. There you go. I can see people coming back from the clip now. You can share any comments you'd like to in the chat box. Of course, there were boys involved in the program, but I thought it was interesting how the girls from several different years volunteered to be in that clip. So what we found is that it's really a chance for building confidence for the kids. And of course, they're writing and writing for performing. It's pretty rare that you get to do that in school. But what I'd also say is that it works with adults too. That what we're really talking about is storytelling and talking about yourself and kind of tickling your funny bone, your sense of humor. And yes, Chris, it usually is co-ed because we work with individual classes. So it's a during the day program where it's built into the curriculum, usually tied to the language arts or in high school drama or English programs. Yeah, they really do come out of their shells, Melanie. Often the teachers find out information they didn't even know about when the kids write. And they all perform in their own classroom. And it's usually mixed groups, of course. And it's just amazing. If you go to the website, take a look, you'll find links to lots of different clips that we do. And we run a program to become a certified happiness facilitator and run that. I think it really does take trust, Sarah, and the comedians are so great. One of our comedians, Kyle Woven and Mark Hallworth, Trevor Burnett. But one comment I'll make just to end this part is that Kyle, who comes from Belleville, he tells the kids about how when he's using comedy, when he's on the stage or with them doing comedy, his anxiety disappears that he's always dealt with in his life, and that when he's doing his comedy, it's not a problem. So it's kind of, they connect with the comedians and they go from there. So thanks for having a look at that. We plan to show you two students at the end of the night so you can see a full act that they do. So I'm going to turn it back over to Maya now.
Thank you so much, Sue. I love that clip. I mean, your program is brilliant, but I like that clip especially because I'm always struck by how there's a group of these girls, and you can see from their age, it's often an age where there are all sorts of, self-esteem issues and insecurities, and through this comedy, you can really see how much confidence and a boost to their self-esteem it gives, and I love seeing that in young girls. So thank you for choosing that clip in particular.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to be adaptable this evening as we wanted to try to cover a few things that people had requested that we go into a little bit more. And I wanted to talk a little bit more this evening. The last couple of sessions, we spoke a lot about self-care. We spoke about well-being, how do we take care of our own well-being, and it's something in general I think we are fairly familiar with. We know that we need to try to have a balance. We know that we need to take care of ourselves socially. We need to make time to be with other people, to not isolate ourselves, to be with family and friends. We know we need to take care of our physical selves. We need to exercise and eat well and sleep well. We know we need to take time away and rest and recharge ourselves. But what's interesting to me is that the key piece to sustaining well-being is actually about being self-aware. And what I mean about that is that we also need to, and I'm going to speak very honestly, this is something that I think I struggle a little bit more with, is that we also need to take the time and find ways to consider our self-awareness and to be in touch with how we're doing so that we know if we're not feeling well, if we're feeling emotionally uncomfortable, if we're listening to the signs often of our body. Sometimes we're feeling tired, or we're forgetful, or we're not functioning as well as we would like to. If we can find ways of being more aware of that, then we are able to seek help if that's what we need, or to stop, or to change how we're doing things, or to recharge. If we don't take time to really work on that self-awareness, and we try to just sort of plow through and ignore the signs and just sort of hope that it's all going to be okay, that's when we can run into trouble. And thank you for that feedback, Melanie, in terms of DBT and how that can help being self-aware and understanding what it is that you're feeling, and sort of asking ourselves, what's going on right now? I know something's going on, but what's going on? And of course, one of the ways that we can work on our self-awareness is through mindfulness. And I'm guessing that many, if not all of you, have heard about mindfulness, but I'm actually going to turn it over to Sue a little bit to talk a bit more about what that means and how we can try to be more mindful and how that can help us.
Okay, I had to turn on my talk button there for a minute. So remember that visual of the mirror. We're going to go back to that in a sec. So I love this slide. Maya and I both can relate to this one, where sometimes it's just your mind is full and you can't cram any more into it. And I think that visual on the right really shows more about what we're talking about being mindful. So really it's taking you into the present, or keeping you in the present. So you're not thinking ahead to the future or what happened yesterday. You're thinking about what's happening now. And it's a very calming thing to do. One of the best explanations I saw of it was a 60-minute special on CBC. Anderson Cooper did a 60-minute special on mindfulness, and he was very skeptical, and I really encourage you to search that out and have a look for it. But it's a very focused thing, and for many people it focuses on breathing and focusing on the breath and just being more aware of your breath. And of course, it was interesting with Anderson Cooper that they had them do mindful eating. How many of us eat and do about 10 other things at the same time, like watching TV and opening the mail and looking at email and so on? Well, and to eat mindfully, to walk mindfully, and then to meditate mindfully is an interesting thing. So last week I mentioned this app called Headspace, which I have been finding very helpful myself. And there's many other apps that you can download, like Calm and Pacifica, Mindspace, or Mindshift rather. And you might have some other ones that you want to share when we get to that longer sharing part at the end. But I found that with mindfulness meditation, they can be visualizations, they can just be focusing on the breath. But I wanted to share with you tonight a specific one, a guided imagery, and have you try it. So are you ready for that? Are you game for that? So I'm looking here for you to focus on some inner habits that nurture your well-being. We're just going to do this short mindfulness meditation that came to me from a fellow World Laughter Tour leader her name's Carol Lee Hubert from Orangeville. I want to give her credit. So if you this will take a few minutes, just 3 or 4 minutes, and I'd invite you to close your eyes and sit comfortably, like you should have both feet on the floor, or maybe you're lying on a bed, but close your eyes and take 3 deep, slow breaths, just for yourself, at your own speed. 3 deep, slow breaths. And maybe even by doing that, you can notice your body relaxing. And then just return to your natural breathing. Now imagine that it's Monday and you're standing in front of that mirror, a mirror, and the first thing you're going to do is give yourself a compliment and really appreciate something about yourself. Find some good in yourself, something that comes to mind, and tell yourself. And we know that it takes between 3 and 5 positive comments to make up for that one we can't let go of. Now imagine that you've gone on into that day of Monday, and you see somebody that you know, someone you often see on Mondays, and you find something to appreciate about that person, and you say so. So hear yourself saying so. And now it's Tuesday, and Tuesdays are for flexibility. So today on Tuesday, you're going to look with new eyes at your world. And look with some wonder and think about, what might I do differently? How might I be more adventurous? Do I have to bend a bit, like a willow tree that bends and comes back? And now it's Wednesday, and Wednesdays are for gratitude. So today is the day that you count your blessings. Who do you appreciate? Who are you grateful for? So think about blessing number 1, blessing number 2, blessing number 3, 4, and 5. And on Wednesdays, think about gratitude and what's working well. And now it's Thursday, and Thursdays are for kindness. So you're going to imagine now that you're kind to yourself first. We often put everybody else first. So what will you do on Thursday to be kind to yourself? And now that you've thought about that, and maybe it's happened, you'll share that kindness with someone else to be kind with them. And now it's Friday, and Fridays are for forgiveness. So you're going to consider forgiving people today. See how ready you are to forgive someone that you've been thinking about and feeling about. And again, you're going to look in the mirror and think if there's something you could forgive yourself for today. And then imagine forgiving some other person. Something, maybe a small thing, maybe a big thing, but letting go and forgiving. And now it's Saturday, it's the weekend. And Saturday, I always say, is for dark chocolate. And so is Sunday. And you can have all the dark chocolate that's right for you, or you can have other things that are good for you. So imagine doing something really good for yourself on Saturday and Sunday, or both. And what delights you, what nourishes you, or what's a treat. Now, I want you to kind of think back over that quick week. Sometimes they feel like they've gone that fast. And just see if there's a specific day that comes back to you, something special that needs attention, a habit, one of those days. So now I'd like you to, when you're ready, open your eyes and come back together into the room with us, and we'll all be back together. So that's an example of a guided imagery that I'm going to go ahead to here, that was introduced to me by one of my mentors, Steve Wilson, the president of the World Laughter Tour. And there's those habits or practices, Steve calls them. So let's just go back to the slide about mindfulness. And you can see the benefits of it. And any comment you'd like to make about the guided imagery or about mindfulness. Or maybe you want to save that to our longer discussion at the end. Thanks to, I see Katie, you've added the Calm website, Calm app, and I love that, a free subscription with their students. Wow. Any comments about the guided imagery? Have you come back to the room yet? Okay. Well, thank you, Cara. If you'd like a copy of that guided imagery, you're just going to have, I'd encourage you to email me, and I'll send it to you. You can adapt it, and you can use many different guided imageries where you can involve smell and sound and journeys of all different in nature. So I'll be glad to share that with you. So here's your chance you're welcome, Corinne. I'd be glad to do that. Here's a chance now. I feel a lot more relaxed, actually, after even reading the guided imagery myself. Oh, I think I'll take a breath. So on the slide there, remember if you were with us last, I guess it was 2 weeks ago for webinar 2. And Trish, I'd like to ask you if you could put up a 5-minute timer. Here, I want to go back and read Kara's comment. Ah, that's an interesting comment, because I guess that's why we always ask people, give them a choice as to whether to close their eyes or not. Sometimes we'll say to kids, just look down at the floor. Look down at the floor at your feet just so they're not distracted. I don't have anything specific about that, but I could imagine you don't want to do anything counterproductive. So we'll talk later about how I can maybe post that guided imagery, or I'd be glad to email it out to everybody. So having a look at this chart, this was a bit of homework from last week, and I was going to ask Trish if she's online with us, if she could put up a 5-minute timer, or we can. And this was the question for, there we go, it's already started. You may have to start that again. The question is, who would you reach out to if you needed help to talk about your own mental health? And I think it's not who could you reach out to, but it's who would you. So we can already see people starting. So I'd like you to take a clip art tool and kind of go along, go into each quadrant and check off, we'll make like a little bar graph, and we'll see what happens. I want to give 3 or 4 minutes here. Let's say 4 minutes, Trish. And then I'd like to ask people to add under the other if you take your text tool and add. Wow, this is happening in front of us. So we're going to give this a few minutes because I want you to think about the other. Let's just see what happens. My goodness. Maya, jump in here too with any comments. I'm just going to give a few more minutes. So does anyone need any help with how to use the text tool for the adding words to the screen? That's 3 more minutes. We're looking so good.
Sue, if I can just make one comment that comes to mind, as
yes.
I see people putting up who they would, as you say, go to, it just reinforces for me how it's a very individual thing, and that is completely fine. And so it's really about finding who are the resources who work for you, so that those are the ones that you will then go to. And it is very, very individual for all kinds of reasons, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. And at different times in your life, you might go to different people. Yes, partner, husband, wife. How could I have forgotten that? Oh, jeez. Oh, that's so obvious. Thank you. And it's funny, when I was making up the chart, the community one seemed to be a little short there, but I don't know, maybe that says something about our communities.
Sue, I'm terrible with the functions on this this beautiful software, so I'm not going to try to type it, but clergy might be one that could be in community for some people.
Yes, that's for sure. So we should add that, or if we're building, and someone last time said this would be a good activity to do or to refer to if somebody came to you asking about, you know, a problem, a situation they were having with well-being and mental health. So clergy would...
Thank you.
be important. In community and professional, like some fall into more than one. I don't know if
I'm having the same experience. Everyone's saying the sound is cutting out. Can you hear me? Was it just Sue's
I
mic?
put my...
Oh. Okay, so Sue, it might be something with your mic. I also can't hear you, Sue. I'm not actually sure if you're speaking, but there seems to be an issue. Why don't we take a second to move along? Okay. Sue, I'm just going to move along, and then hopefully we can sort out your sound. I'll move on to some character strengths for now. So thank you for that, everybody, for participating in that. And again, I think it's really interesting how there are many different kinds of resources out there that people can go to. It is, again, a very individual thing. And as Sue said so well, you know, it can vary. And I know certainly for myself as well, you know, sometimes there were certain people that I would go to. And there might be certain people that you'll go to for certain issues as well, and others for others. So it's just important to think about who those people might be and that they're out there. So I'm going to move along to a slightly different topic. On my first session, I had spoken a little bit about character strengths, and someone's just sharing. I'm just going to stop for one second. Someone's sharing that sometimes when things get tough, you want to hide inside and not reach out to anyone, which causes problems in itself. And that is so true. It's almost counterintuitive sometimes when we're in a really dark place or really feeling down. Instinctually, we tend to sort of isolate ourselves. And sometimes it can be helpful when you're not feeling like that, when you're feeling a bit better, to think about who are those resources, so that perhaps when you're in that moment, it'll be a little bit quicker to sort of reach out. But yes, it is very, very hard to be vulnerable. For all of us, that is a reality of being human, I think. But it's interesting too, and if any of you are familiar with Brene Brown's work, it's interesting too, the power that can come once we realize it's okay to be vulnerable. And we actually allow ourselves to do that, and it can be somewhat freeing, although it can be difficult because, as Sarah's sharing, we perceive it to be a weakness. And isn't it interesting that, in fact, we're all walking around feeling that same thing? and yet all experiencing that. Thank you for sharing. Maybe we'll get back to that when we open things up in a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about positive psychology and about character strengths. We had spoken a little bit about this the first time, but I realized that I had perhaps not pieced things very well, and we ended up rushing through, and I thought it could be interesting to come back. So positive psychology, for those of you who are not very familiar, is really the scientific study of positive human functioning. And it is a domain of psychology that was sort of launched into the public eye in about 1998 by Martin Seligman, if any of you are familiar with his work from the University of Pennsylvania. And he looked at the factors that contribute to a fulfilling life, a happy life, or as he calls it, to our flourishing. And part of his theoretical model looks at what he describes as virtues and character strengths. And so the virtues, and he classifies them as being 6 virtues, really have a basis in different historical cultural texts, whether it's the Old Testament, whether it's the Quran, or honestly a variety of sort of historical cultural texts all talk about virtues that are very similar. First Nations peoples have similar concepts, and the 6 virtues that are outlined in positive psychology are wisdom, humanity, temperance, justice, courage, and transcendence. And in positive psychology, we look at character strengths, of which they have classified 24 character strengths, which are essentially those 6 virtues in action. And the understanding is that the application of these character strengths, of which we all have them, we all have all of those strengths, and I'm going to get into them in just a second. When we use those on a regular basis, that can promote feelings of happiness and well-being. And when we use those strengths in service to others, that can promote a sense of meaning to our lives. Now, I'm going to go through the character strengths briefly. I do want to point out that none of them are more valuable than any other. There are some that come to each of us more naturally, more easily, that we use on a regular basis. For each of us, we have some that are a little bit less used. We can develop all of them. It's just interesting to sort of think about how we use them and how we can use them more to promote how we're feeling about our own well-being, how we're functioning, and how we are contributing to the well-being of others as well. So I'm just going to go through those. And so if we look at the virtue of wisdom, and I realize that there's an error on this slide. Forgive me, love should not be here. I don't know what happened there. So the character strengths are creativity, curiosity, perspective, learning, and judgment. And if we go to the virtue of humanity, the character strengths are social intelligence, love, and kindness. Melanie, you made my day with your comment that love is everywhere. Thank you for that. When we look at the virtue of temperance, we're talking about strengths like forgiveness, which Sue spoke about just before, prudence, self-regulation, which is linked to these notions of mindfulness and being aware of how we're doing emotionally and being able to regulate that, and humility. When we look at the virtue of justice, we're talking about strengths such as teamwork, leadership, fairness. And when we look at the virtue of courage, we're talking about strengths such as bravery, honesty, zest, perseverance. And finally, when we look at the virtue of transcendence, we're talking about appreciation of excellence and beauty, spirituality, humor, certainly one of my favorites, hope, beauty, and gratitude. So gratitude is, in fact, a defined character strength according to positive psychology. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that. I did just want to mention again that if you're interested in learning more about character strengths, There's a wonderful website called, it's www.viacharacter.org. And on that website, there's actually a very short assessment tool that you can do in sort of 5-10 minutes. It's called the Via Character Survey, which will help you pull out your top 5 character strengths and what we refer to as your signature strengths. And I do want to just reiterate that your signature strengths are really just the ones that you, being who you are, tend to use more naturally and more often in your life. Again, there's no weighted value to any strengths. They are all valuable, and we use all of them in different ways. But it can be interesting to look at the ones that are your signature strengths, and you know, I like to think of it as it frames a little bit how you approach the world. And it can be interesting to then think about, okay, so how can I use these strengths more often? How can I use these strengths in service to others? Or perhaps how can I develop some of these other strengths that I'm not using as often? That can also be interesting to do. So there's a wealth of information on that website if any of you are interested in this topic more. Also, you know, please feel free to email me. It's a topic I certainly love to talk about. So, you know, gratitude, as mentioned here, is one of the strengths related to transcendence. And it's a strength that we spoke about, Sue spoke about last time, and she's going to talk a little bit more about why gratitude is so interesting when we're having a conversation about well-being.
Well, I think that it stands out for me in the character strengths because it's something I use almost daily, and Maya's going to suggest some gratitude strategies next. But it brings a smile to my face when I think about who I'm thankful for and who I appreciate, and I try to do that quite regularly. It's to me, it's one of the sweetest shortcuts to happiness and well-being. And instead of living in the future and thinking, well, when I have this big vacation or when I retire or when I whatever, you start to realize that you have enough right now. And it gets you more into the present. And it gets you thinking about the positive. So Maya, why don't you suggest some of the strategies? I've tried a gratitude journal. I found it was really hard to write in every day, but once a week it kind of helped. But what do you think, Maya?
Sure. So maybe we'll talk through a couple of these, and they're all little ideas, and I'm sure you have others, and we can talk about that in a second. One very common one, you might have heard about it before, is called 3 good things. And there's actually some interesting research that shows that this is a really good way of boosting a routine of gratitude in your life. And so essentially all you do is at the end of the day, perhaps before bed, you think about your day and you think about 3 good things that happened that day. And it's important to write them down. So whether you have a journal, like Sue was just mentioning, or a piece of paper by your bedside, and to look at why did they happen and why did they feel good. And so the idea that you do this every day, it's suggested that you do it for 1 week. And at the end of the week, it can be interesting to look back and look, were there themes to what I'm grateful about, or what allowed these good things to happen, or why they felt good. And yes, I agree. I've tried journals where I've done it on a daily basis, and I found it difficult to do that. What I found easier was doing it for a week to get a little bit into the routine of it, and then sort of going to, you know, making it a Sunday evening ritual or whatever works for you. So that's one little idea. Another simple thing that we already do but perhaps don't do enough of is thank you notes, and finding an intentional way to express a little thank you to people who have done something that you're grateful for. Something I've done on occasion is sort of decided, okay, every Wednesday morning when I get to the office, before I get into the slew of emails that are in my inbox, I'm going to fling off a little thank you email to somebody on my team or someone at work for something that happened over the last week. Even better, if you're feeling up to it, it can be interesting to do a face-to-face thank you, something we really don't do often enough. Maybe you'll actually go out of your way and go down the hall to your friend's classroom and just say, I'm here to say thank you. I really appreciate you pitching in and helping me when I was having a hard time yesterday. I'm really grateful. And what's interesting about thank you notes is that not only does this expression of gratitude help us and make us feel better, but you're paying it forward, and it's in service to others. I mean, we all know what it feels like when someone actually takes the time to say thank you to us, even for the smallest thing. So it has sort of a ripple effect, which I find really interesting. There's another one, a little exercise you can do, a gratitude rock. And yes, Melanie, a gratitude journal is great, and that was similar to what Sue was mentioning. It's like 3 good things, but whether you do it daily or whenever you're feeling like it, or you have another routine and you sort of jot down what you're grateful for. And it can be really interesting when you're not feeling so positive to pull that out and kind of flip through it and remind ourselves, okay, there are things to be grateful for as well. A gratitude rock is really a very simple exercise. You literally find a small rock or pebble or crystal or something that speaks to you. Maybe you're going to the beach this summer and you like polished rocks that you find in the sand. And you choose one and you place it somewhere where you're going to come across it often. Many people will actually pop it in their pocket in the morning. And so whenever they put their hand in their pocket or they happen to touch it, it's sort of a quick trigger or a reminder to just take a couple of seconds to think of one thing that you're grateful for in that moment. And what's interesting about this exercise is it's actually also a mindful exercise. It shifts us back to the present. It makes us do a quick shift of perspective and just sort of get into a routine of little moments of gratitude, these micro moments of gratitude. A gratitude wall or a tree, that's something that can be fun to do actually at your place of work, maybe even in your classroom with the kids. All you need is a wall. You can put up at the top of your wall, today I am grateful for, I like to use Post-its because they're so easy and they don't damage the paint. And so my place of work is always appreciative of that. And you just have a marker, and when people walk by, they write something on a Post-it and they stick it on the wall. And what can be really fun, first of all, as you walk by, you're always stopping to read what are the new things that people are grateful for, and it can be little things like my favorite song came on the radio on my commute this morning, or someone brought me a coffee, I'm so grateful. Oh, I love what Chris says, putting a big sheet on the fridge I'm grateful for. Chris, I might just implement that in my own house with my kids. Thank you for that suggestion. It's exactly the same thing. And what's really beautiful is with time, it gets fuller and fuller and fuller, and really can change the energy of wherever this wall is placed. A gratitude gift box is something, when we talk about gratitude in service of others, something that you can do for someone in your life. Essentially, you have a box, whether it's a little dollar store box or a Kleenex box that happens to be pretty, and you just fill it with little pieces of paper of things about that person that you are grateful for, things perhaps they did or characteristics that you're grateful for. You can even put little symbols perhaps in there. One thing that I've done with teams at work, I've actually dedicated a team meeting and gave everybody a box and slips of paper. And everyone sort of decorated their box and put their name on it. And then we went around to everyone else's box and we wrote a little thing that we were grateful for related to that person and put it in their box. And at the end, everyone sort of went back to their office with a box of thank yous about them. And it was actually an exercise, it seemed so simple at the time, and people talked about it for the longest time afterwards and kept these boxes on their desks. Saying grace is an expression of gratitude, and I'm just going to point out, it doesn't have to be religious. We can be thankful for all kinds of things, just taking a moment before eating a meal together with others to express what we're thankful for in our lives. And finally, 4 questions. So asking, and we do this sometimes, we're big on family dinners in my home. We have many, many children and many people around the table. And something we like to do on a weekly basis is to ask certain questions. And, you know, you can choose different ones. It can be questions like, what touched me today, or what touched you today? What or who inspired you today? What's the best thing that happened today? What made you smile today? And one of my favorites, of course, is going around the table and asking, what made you laugh today? And everyone has a chance to sort of share, you know, a moment of positive laughter that they had in that day. And usually it ends up with all of us laughing about everyone's bit of sharing. So there's just a few ideas. What I will say is, if you're interested in gratitude exercises, you literally just have to type into Google gratitude exercises and you will find hundreds of different creative ideas that people have, and many of them very, very simple, costing nothing, and don't take much time, and can be really interesting in terms of what they can add to our lives and to others. So, any comments about that in terms of gratitude exercises, maybe things that people have tried that they'd like to share? We're kind of moving into the next phase, actually, of what we had hoped to do. So maybe I'll just open that up, actually. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. We're in sync tonight. So what we wanted to do, you know, over the last couple of weeks and even tonight, Sue and I have shared different ideas of things that we can do to honor our well-being, and things that have worked for other people, things that have worked for us. But we really wanted to hear from you and to have a bit of an exchange for the rest of the time that we have today about what you've tried and what works for you, or maybe even things that you have tried and felt it didn't work for you. If you're, you know, willing to share why that is, that could be interesting as well. So Erin is saying she likes what we said in the first workshop. Instead of saying, how was your day, start a conversation with what made you laugh today. And yes, that is an expression of gratitude for our happiness. And it really starts conversations quite differently too, which is interesting. I'm just going to add on that, your comment there, Erin. What's interesting about that, whether you say what made you laugh today, or what was the best thing about your day, or what made you smile today, you know, there are people in all of our lives who tend to jump to the negative, if we can put it that way. And I think we all know people where you ask them, how are you? And right away they launch into this long list of all the things that are going wrong for their day and their life, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting when you start an interaction already asking for the positive, how it can change the dynamic in the conversation completely. So that's interesting. Yes, what a great way of starting attendance with students. My gosh, I wish I had teachers who had done that and started our day off positively in the classroom. If anyone would like to take the mic by clicking on talk to take the mic or raising a hand, we would love to hear from you even live if someone's willing to share. Perhaps have any of you tried anything related to mindfulness?
And we put up this whiteboard too as well. Would that be okay, Maya, to go to that slide? That
Thank you.
If people would like to use the text tool and type some ideas, but I mean, we know you used your mics last week when you were laughing, so we can see some things in the chat. And so use the whiteboard or your mic, whatever's comfortable. We've got 10, 15 minutes here. So Erin, what did you mean by what type of mindfulness activities? What was that in response to? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, Melanie. Okay, so Melanie, what did that teacher do? Or what did the class do? Can you tell us a bit about that, Melanie? Okay, it's in the chat there.
So Kara's sharing an image. We're able to click on that? Oh. So breathing, to do mindful breathing. Yes, that's great. And there are all kinds of different apps that are similar to that in terms of syncing your breathing, whether you call it cardiac coherence or heart math or just mindful breathing. That can be really wonderful for children and adults.
What grade is that with, Christina, where you're doing yoga and the breathing techniques? I'm trying to get you to use the mic. Junior kindergarten. Great. Wow. So how does it affect the kids? Tell us some more about that, Christina. How does it affect their day or their morning whenever you're doing that? I'd love to hear more about that. Some teachers are finding that they use the mindfulness breathing after recess. At the beginning of the day would be obvious, but in elementary school with after recess. Here we've got a comment. It depends on the day. They have the yoga mats, right? That's funny. There was a great, I think I saw it, I'm not sure if it was on Twitter or Facebook, about a school that had, instead of giving kids detentions, they were using mindfulness breathing. Something about that, and that it cut way down on the behavior problems. Kids had a useful technique they could take away with it.
I saw that as well, Sue, and it's similar to what they found, even a very different environment. But in prisons, the same thing, that they've started teaching mindfulness techniques and breathing exercises and seen a reduction in terms of behaviors. It's pretty magical stuff.
Yeah. Oh, imagine having to learn that in prison. I mean, we talked about laughter groups and for prison populations too, but if they'd only just learned that earlier, like,
if they had wonderful teachers like this who were introducing it, such a young age.
So thanks, Christina. Yeah, teachers benefit more. Yeah, you've rushed around all morning, and recess comes and lunchtime, and you need that mindfulness time for yourself. So, can you picture mindfulness with just music playing, or sometimes I turn on an Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra recorded meditation, or Headspace is all different. And one thing in Headspace is they have different meditations for anxiety and stress and cancer and body and mind, and you can kind of pick which ones you want to do. Yeah, I don't know who typed that on the whiteboard, but yeah, I think the washroom's often an escape, just to do some deep breathing. So trying to make that a part of your day. So Michelle's asking, what's the app that I mentioned? I'm talking about Headspace. I can type some more in the chat, because I have a list, if I can put my fingers on it, of some other different apps. So I'll do that while we're looking at this these comments. I think the music helps a lot. And that they're techniques the kids can use at home too.
I like this comment. So someone wrote in, recognizing when I'm feeling upset or trying to name feelings can be a bit hard. So I use faces to help me and take a few moments to do mindfulness. When you're saying faces, are you talking about sort of emojis in terms of representing how you're feeling? Whoever wrote that, I'm curious if that's what you mean, because that's a great little technique and that's wonderful to use with kids. Yeah, emojis, yeah. That's great. That's great.
Yes. You're trying to put just a face to it instead of words to it. One mindfulness activity I've tried with kids is to have them listen for sounds. Like I'll have a chime or a bell, ring that chime, ding, and it gets softer and softer, and they put their hands up when they can't hear that sound. But then they have to listen for other sounds, which could be inside the room or outside the room. So they're focusing on sounds, and it's amazing what some kids hear and other kids don't, that other kids don't hear. Well, think about some of the other topics, and we've got about 5 minutes here before we want to make some ending comments and have you see one more little clip. I think when my mic wasn't working back there, I hope you can hear me now, we're doing that activity with the 4 quadrants. There was a comment about sometimes kind of going inside and not wanting to talk to anybody about it. And I've learned, especially over the last year, that offloading your worries and problems to somebody else really helps. Like if you go to any of those people that were on our chart there, and that you feel more in control when you've talked about it. At least I do. When you get it out of your heart and your head, and you talk about it. And I remember, I know I have a particular social worker that I'm working with right now, and she describes it kind of like offloading, and that we have different stresses. She gave me an analogy of like each stress is a plate, and if you keep stacking plates on plates on plates, up and up and up, that those plates are going to break. And if you can talk to somebody and share that, that can help. And she also made me realize with that chart that I wonder if other people were doing that chart, creating that chart, whose chart would you be on? That they would come to you for help, that you would be the person on that list, like Imri or Katie or Cara or Krista or Melanie, whose name, who would come to you and trust you and be vulnerable enough to talk with you. And I think we have to do that more for our colleagues. And through thick and thin, that you can be of help as well. So I can see some other good comments coming up there. Melanie's saying, Tibetan singing bowls. Oh, kids would love that. So I think a lot of these comments are showing us that we need to calm down a lot at school and in the classroom. I mean, there's
what's neat is also, Sue, that it shows that the fact that kids respond to it is that they want that. You know, they want to be supported, to have sort of calmer moments, and you know, they want to lie on the yoga mat even at a very little age, just like we do.
Yeah, yeah. And that kids will come to you as teachers and trust you to help them too, and sometimes just in their innocence, that and that's where the joy of teaching comes. Oh yeah, just how to breathe in and out. How to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, maybe even laughing a bit and smiling. How to breathe out with their diaphragm and in and feel their tummy going up and down. I mean, I wonder how many curriculum documents that's in.
Have any of you ever had any feedback from parents of kids who are being introduced to these kinds of activities, in terms of the children bringing it home, or them feeling that there's been an impact on their child as a result? I'm curious if you've heard any impact of sort of the generalization or the taking of that into the home environment.
Oh, that looks good. Thanks, Christina.
I like the title already.
Yeah. Baby breathe, it should be. For everybody who isn't a mama. Oh, for busy moms. I got to get that for a couple people I know. Oh, wow. Thank you. I think sometimes parents are a bit concerned about mindfulness because they think it's got some kind of, I don't know, manipulative or religious background, but I really think we need to have our facts straight, that it's based in science and it's a proven technique for slowing down the heart rate and for calming people. So we need to be able to counteract that when we hear it, because we don't want anyone to be afraid of it. Well, good. Positive feedback, Corinne. There's that comment. Yeah. Stretching. Yeah. I like that. That's great. I like that. Stretching your diaphragm, right? Well, Maya, if it's okay with you, I think we should go on to, because I wanted to give people time to look at this little clip with the two young men. And we've had some questions and comments. And we want, before we show you that, to just have you think about, many of you have been with us on all 3 webinars, and to think about 1 or 2 or 3 commitments or promises that you might make to yourself because of your time doing this. And again, if you share them or write them down, you're more likely to do them. So think about what you're willing to do, what action you can take. And I just remind you about the Kidding Around book. my latest book and the website, and that will be in the video version of the webinar. And we're going to, oh, thank you, Imriam. I know, I just seeing you write that makes me smile. I'm working on being more positive. There was a strategy that Louise, last week's moderator, shared with me, and she said that this was an activity she gave to kids where she gave them a blank piece of paper with a dot in the middle. Everybody got one. And then she asked the kids to talk about what the meaning of the page was. And all the kids tended to talk about the dot. And she would proceed to say, the teacher would say that it's right there in front of you. You're all looking at the dot, but you're not seeing the rest of the page. And sometimes we stare so long at the wrong things that we miss the right things. So I'm so glad to see you write that comment about being more positive. So I would like to ask Trish to put up that link and this last little clip, and then we'll just come back for a final comment from Maya, is to have you look at this. Now it's 2 young boys in grade 7, and they'll introduce themselves. So if you would click on that link and have a chuckle and listen, they go pretty fast. And then if you'd put a little check mark when you're back in the room with us. So go for it and have a good time watching. I can see people coming back now to the room. Well, we wanted to end with laughter and remind you that laughter prevents hardening of the attitude. I just love those 2 young boys. Of course, they're now, and this is about 3 or 4 years ago, they're now in about grade 11 or 12. But they're so creative, and the fact that they worked on it together was amazing. So I'm just going to turn it back to you, Maya. I've enjoyed the webinars and wish everybody well and take care, and I'll leave the last words for Maya.
Sure. So, I mean, I was laughing out loud at that little video. What a great way to end this wonderful webinar series. And really, I wanted to end with my own gratitude exercise in which I want to express how grateful both Sue and I are to all of you for having joined us, not just tonight, but the last 2 sessions as well. Your participation has been so enriching. We've learned from you. I've taken home all kinds of ideas that have come out. We hope that we've given you some ideas and some tools that you might be able to carry forth when you're looking at your own well-being. And well done for caring about your well-being enough to have joined us. And just a thank you to Trish for being moderator extraordinaire, and to OTF, of course, for giving us this opportunity. So thank you so much. It really has been an absolute pleasure.
All right. On that note, I'll jump in with my own gratitude from OTF for you two sharing all of your knowledge with us. I'm going to quick stop the recording, and I've got 1 or 2 things to say.